So I stuff that you send me, which I don't really do for anyone else. That shows you how much I think about you. And I found some of it very fascinating, even though I do a lot of research on my own and have done over the years, particularly this Michael Salas stuff, which had fallen in line with some other stuff that I had picked up on, and it kind of like crossed over. And I thought, oh, I'm going to talk to her about this. I'm going to talk to her about that. And then you have a few days go by, and it's not a new day. It's literally a new world. Like you
Yes.
just wake up, I mean, especially these last few days, and I'm like going, wow. And today, as normally happens with the schedule with Morgan, she sends out a lot of dates. People pick dates. You come and see
Mm.
what's up for the day, and it just the energy just takes over. The third energy, the golden child, whatever you want to call it, the Holy Spirit, and it's just been an amazing day. So all day long, I'm thinking, oh my God, Mary's gonna it'll be the bookend tonight. And wow, I mean, I don't know where to start. We got what 25 are already in the house, so we'll get started. But it's good to see you. I just want to say, and I don't mean to, I'm not blowing smoke. I just want to say I am. It's such an honor to serve with you, to see what's happening, to turn on Prime Video and Guy whatever, and I'm watching some documentary, and then and Mary pops up, and that happened at least three times on three different shows. But it's such a pleasure to see also that people are responding and becoming aware of the work you've been doing for 25 years. And I'm just happy to see it. I really am. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Todd. And you're always so very generous. And of course, you know what I'm like. This is really my story in the sense that I want to know what's going on. And ultimately, I feel a little bit like a cosmic Agatha Christie. I want to know who did what, when, and how. And it sort of encompasses the cosmos, as it were. And I've taken a deep dive because I'm going to actually start talking more about the soul journey and timelines. Actually, in another one, I don't know how many of the audience are going to come along with me, but more and more the information, particularly about the space arcs, and I wanted to say how
Yes.
I came across it because this started for me some months ago when I did a regression for a lovely lady who had an experience, and I've done it in the last Portal to Ascension presentation. I explain about Beth and what let me give you a bit of a backstory so people understand. I knew nothing about arcs. I knew nothing about, Dr. Sala, any of that prior to this.
Really?
So
Wow.
this was this came up after my investigation with a wonderful lady who had an experience on board craft. She was on board craft with several people that she knew, and that was interesting. She recognized them, and she thought it was a dream like they did. The next morning, they all ring her up and say, "We had a dream about being on a spacecraft. It was really weird, and you were on it, and you were on it, and you were on it, all this kind of stuff." There was a number of them, which was fascinating that they all remembered, including a guy who was a friend, and he had found himself several miles away from his car and couldn't work out why. His name was Frank. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Beth wanted to know more about that experience. She remembered certain things about the beings. She remembered being shown exotic plants, and that's important because it goes into what they are leaving for us on this planet, and I'll explain that in a minute. So she's shown these beings. She's also given a message that she can't remember. So that leads into, let's do a regression. I want to understand this message, this final message from these beings. So we do I'm cutting it short, but there is more information in this presentation,
Take as
obviously.
much time as you want.
Right. Well, let me just read a little bit
Yeah, take
about
as
it.
much time as you want, Mary. I'm in no rush if you're not.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me just give you. I mean, I'll start a little bit, and you won't have the images that Beth drew for me, which are brilliant, I might add. But let me just explain what she's saying. She said it was a summer night. She was in bed. She saw what she thought was a light from a helicopter come through her window. and shine on her. The light grew brighter. She jumped out of bed and ran a few feet down the hallway. The light remained on her, even through the walls. It stopped in her head. There was in her head was a voice that said, "We need you to come with us, but we won't take you unless you say okay." She consented and wasn't afraid. She said she was brought up to a small ship. Sitting in a chair to the right was a happy-looking, small grey being with a whitish silver jumpsuit. The being didn't look at me. He was focused on piloting the craft. The window was in front of us, and I looked to his left, and there was my friend, Frank. And he leaned forward, smiling at me, and shouted, he was so excited, "This is fucking awesome." And he remembers that. He remembers that.
Oh,
You know?
oh my God.
Anyway, she says that she recognized some of the other friends on board the spacecraft, and this is the next thing she says. The ship landed on a port in a much larger ship. We walked into a room that was blinding light, white. My eyes had to adjust. The walls and ceiling and floor and the table all glowing white. The light was coming from them. Inside the room were 7 other people that I knew, including 4 taller beings. Frank and I walked into the room. I said, "Where are the light bulbs?" And they thought that was humorous. My friend was laying on the table. The tall being had a light white skin, no hair, large eyes, a robe that was flowing silvery material with a high collar, long sleeves, was waving a cloth material over her body, counterclockwise and then clockwise. The other beings were speaking to my friends telepathically. Then she goes into, it was my turn to lay on the table. The being had so much love, peace, wisdom, the same sort of scan over me with the cloth. I got up and walked over to one of the beings. They were all taller and had robes on. They wanted to show me something. The wall turned into a window and we looked down. It revealed a waterfall garden, beautiful flowers. There was a path that the shorter beings, same as the driver of the first ship where we were driving, looked like a golf cart. I asked the being about the flowers telepathically. He said, "We collect beautiful things and bring them to other worlds." I asked, "Who are they?" The shorter being she met. The being, who was around 5'10", 6 foot, said, "They are the workers, but we are the teachers. We have been here since your beginning. We watch over you, humans. You have been given information you will remember when the time is right." His face was so beautiful, peaceful and loving, felt protective of us. I spoke with my friends and her mother and another friend. The next thing I remember, I was back in my body and thought, what a crazy dream. The next thing that happened was it was not a dream. She said, next morning my phone rang. My friend asked if I remembered the dream. She said she and her mother remembered everything up on the spaceship. The recall was identical. The mother said, "What do you think of our dream?" My mind was blown. We compared the event. Finally, Frank called. Up to this point, I'd believed this was a shared dream. Frank's account changed that. He said he was walking down the street at 2 a.m. He thought the light that came upon him was a truck with high beams, but it was a small ship that picked him up. I asked him if he remembered what he said to me when we were in the small ship together. And he said in the same excitement, "This is fucking awesome." Frank said that when he dropped him off, he was 3 miles away from where they picked him up. He was annoyed he had to walk a lot longer to get home.
Oh my God.
Every person, with the exception of one, remembered what happened that evening. 2 were somewhat freaked out, but everyone else had life-changing experiences. Only 1 didn't remember. Now, the next interesting thing, this is the bit where it ties into the arks. Beth was on board the spacecraft, showing new species of plants. She said, "I believe we're getting these mysterious plants very soon." She said, "I didn't give much thought to the plants. They were growing in the ship next to the waterfall. I thought they were just pretty. These are plants that have been gathered throughout the galaxy universes, and they have modified them. I'm remembering that they use plant DNA in creating their craft. The walls glow, and it is because they're using DNA from the plants. They have bioluminescence properties and also use some of their own DNA so that the craft interacts with the occupants. It's an extension of them.
Yeah.
So if they want a chair, for instance, one will be created with intention. They will be gifting humanity with these plants they have created. The sap will glow. There'll be many different uses for these plants, from everyday practicality of creating light to healing. The plants were next to the waterfall, so I think they don't directly give the plants to a person or scientist. We will find these amazing new species of plants somewhere where there are waterfalls. They will place them there so we discover them, or simply hand them to us, pending our readiness to disclosure. Now we get to the interesting, what I call the extra interesting stuff. So she wanted to know more about this message that she knew she was given but didn't remember. So what she discovered is this: past life in Atlantis, the same soul team that was on board the spacecraft were in at the time of Atlantis. This is in the regression. She said, at the time we saw many things in Atlantis that we knew were sick and knew that we were being lied to. These spoke out about these were punished. The light workers were in the minority. The ones that stood for truth and justice were in the minority. The society was sick. Now listen to the parallels. We, the awake, knew that we were going to be destroyed if we didn't elevate our frequencies and stand up for sovereignty. Can you see? It's so interesting. But this time I believe we will succeed. We will unite. The majority of us have pure spirit. There's a way of measuring our spirit frequencies. This time our love and unity will carry us to the next level dimension. It's so parallel, the exact same scenario as Atlantis is occurring right now. In Atlantis, we didn't complete our mission. And she showed me an image of the Codex Linda, which is an ancient script that looks similar to how they used to write in Atlantis. But the next bit is the bit that I want to mention to you. So I've got an image of that. Information on recall of Atlantis from the astral. In 1989, I was drawn through the astral to under the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico, just south of an Air Force Base in Fort Walton, Florida. I would be pulled there out of body. I will go flying from my home straight to the water in the ocean. I'm seeking a portion of either a craft or a stargate. It's some technology I think we hid from ourselves until the time was right. I'm seeing the glyphs glowing and this object beginning to surface in the silt at the bottom of the ocean. A part of it is exposed now. The brown area around the glyph is supposed to be sandy silt. I've got an image of it, actually, on the presentation. Back to the tech. It's my opinion, either a craft or a stargate that we used in Atlantis. We will be discovering it, or the tech will be finding us. So she goes on. Beside it becoming activated, I received an equation I believe was used to program it for waking up at this time. The equation is a sine wave or frequency, universal location time equals change. So multiply the fractional number of the universal location divided by time, x sine wave or frequency equals change or activation. It's odd that I got the equation in this way. I believe it's part of a grid of many ark ships that have been either under the ocean or hidden in land masses. They're all over the world. This particular one, for whatever reason, is calling me. I have a group that will remote view it with pure intention, asking if it needs help or has a message for us. Now remember, I knew nothing about Michael Sala's information and the arks or anything at this time. I believe all of these artifacts, timepieces, knowledge vaults, will be surfacing around the world. They will be used for the real history of our species. There is technology that will help humanity and Earth and propel us into the future timeline that we only dreamt of. And she said this, she saw a portal stargate. I'm visualizing a very large stargate that hovered above the water on a platform. These arks have been in stasis waiting for this time. I don't know if we should physically go there or if connecting to it the way I have has been enough. Now, exopolitics, we get to the exopolitics. I'll tell you the message afterwards as well. I heard all of this. It was going to be part of this presentation, along with other memories of past life connections to their mission on this planet. I've got a whole presentation I just did on that. But I come across Mike Sala, and he's done 2 interviews. One is with Alex Collier and Ilana Danan on March the 7th. Sorry, the 7th of March this year. Now, remember, this is after all of this from Beth.
Right.
And that's what's fascinating, is I didn't know about any of this till then. In Exopolitics today, Dr. Sala with Alex Collier and Ilan Danan discussed the latest intel regarding space arks, extraterrestrial fleets, Alex and Ilana's contacts with extraterrestrials with the Andromeda Council and Galactic Federation, but they're talking about arks in other countries. And now let's go to a little bit more of that, because again, another interview Dr. Michael Sala did with JP, a whistleblower. He's in Army intelligence, talked about ovoid space arks activated in the Ukraine. Right. Now this takes this to a whole new level of geopolitics. What we've got is what they talked about in that interview. The whistleblower, JP, says the ark possesses exotic plant life. Right? Russia seeks to perform smaller space arks located near the city of Kiev, according to JP. He states Russia already possesses a space ark on its own territory, which possesses exotic technology. He describes another space ark in central Brazil. All space arks are being activated and form an integrated network that will eventually float into the sky in what will amount to a global disclosure event. He says the arks and the extraterrestrial fleet connected to them represent a benign force and will help humanity enter a new golden age. JP serves in the US Army, states ovoid-shaped spacecraft are under the Ukraine desert Oleshki Sands near the city of Kherson has been taken over by the Russian army.
That was the first one they took, I believe.
This is what's so fascinating. This so ties in after the event, and that's what gave it so much credibility to me. This was after the event of me doing Regression with Beth, and the hidden message, which I'll finish with. In Regression, she said, "In our past life on Atlantis, we failed. I know what they meant by we bring beautiful things to the planets. We bring humans and other species. They watch over us. They love us like children. They're our teachers. I don't know if I'm one of them. I do know that my most recent life wasn't on Earth. I was on a spaceship. The beings felt like Octahedrons, but they weren't blue. And they said this from the teachers, we are your parents. You are our children. To evolve is to choose correctly the love frequency above fear and greed, open hearts and unity. The darkness will try and divide. We need to wake the people up to show them that they have a choice to serve for the greater good, not fear and ignorance. Earth will be part of a galactic community, no longer in fear, which is an illusion to rise above it and see the lie. Service to others, lead by example, time is short, evolve and choose correctly. The new Earth is bright, you have a place in the galactic future. We love you."
Wow.
That was the message.
That's fucking awesome. Sorry. Yeah, I just had to say that because, excuse my French, I wouldn't normally say that in front of a lady. But, wow, there's a lot to unpack there. And I was going to ask you about this, but now I didn't even have to. But, okay, so the arcs themselves, as you understand it, and I know some of this isn't like 100, but they are because there's the etheric, the metaphoric, the physical, yeah. But like the arcs themselves seem to represent, how would I say this, like an energy complex, and even with the physicality or with the plants and all that, but that there's a coordinated scenario going on here. And then you mentioned an oval shape, I think is what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
have you heard or picked up anything in regard to octahedrons in terms of the new Earth? I mean, I know an oval isn't exactly the same shape as an octahedron, but a lot of people have talked about they're seeing octahedrons as a vehicle in the new Earth, and as the like the template or the base component of the new grid.
I haven't come across that, but when we're looking at all the geometry that's coming through different intuitives,
Yeah.
many are drawing the geometry of which I think is a part of the downloads of the new physics that we'll be exposed to as we understand, from our limited understanding of physics. This is going to be a new physics, but part of the creative spectrum, I suspect. But I don't know a lot about that, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the first thing that strikes me about what you've just told us is the sequential and synchronistic aspect of how this occurred. Everybody that's here, okay, I don't even have to ask them. A lot of this is happening. Things are happening in a sequence. They're happening synchronistically. It's kind of it's becoming palpable. And so that tells me right off the bat, not to mention the fact that you're like me and you want to vet everything. So I know how that works, but it feels, I've never heard anything about the arks until recently. I've heard of gateways and portals and, stories, abundant stories of what occurred in Vietnam, even World War II, and just different scenarios. But the other thing that this brings to me, which is what I'm picking up from the work I do and what I'm exposed to, is that it feels very imminent. As she said in there's not much time or something like that, but it feels very imminent. And I don't mean that in a threatening or a bad way or anything to be scared about. It just feels like it's moving very, very fast, even by the day, even like today.
Mm. And that's interesting for me too, because so many are saying they feel this almost anticipation or this anxiety for some about what's unfolding. And some of it, they're no doubt tapping into the chaos around the planet and the shift that's going on in people. And people are being activated, very spontaneous, very quickly. And that creates a disorientation. What is true, what is real. We've got all this information out there now, and it's contradictory, and some of it's very frightening, and some of them don't know what to make of it. So all of that contributes to this feeling of being out of our normal state of balance and harmony. But with it is also the activation frequencies that are getting people to explore a greater reality on themselves. And the interesting thing for me is I'm working more and more with helping people manage that. As they are activated, they start to sense things, they start to see things, they start to see orbs of light, feel energies, which, and they don't know what to do with it. They are completely and frightened in some cases, because if they're very religious and have a belief system that says this is not okay, that scares them as well, because it might be, these are demons or whatever. Right. And then we've got the very 3D scientific approach of psychology and psychiatry that is saying that anything like this means that you're mentally ill in some way. So they're afraid that that's what's going on, that they are actually ill. So you've got all this going on with people at the moment. But I think this is part of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
For us to start to see, the wood for the trees, if you like.
Well, one of the things I've noticed too, and I was talking about this earlier today on another show, you have certain situations, and we can go right down the list, but, like COVID, Ukraine would be at the top of the list, COVID-related stuff. And it's not like something to me looks very clear. It's not about the outcome of a given situation. It's about what's occurring within that situation. As an example, if you look at YouTube and other social media, where they've taken away on YouTube, they've taken away the numbers on dislikes. Okay. And if you look at that, you go, well, who are they serving with that, And then if you look at, and I'm again, this is not political. This is just an observation of what is the energy showing us and how's it materializing. So last week, Trump goes to Dallas or somewhere in Texas and pulls 87,000 people, 62,000 people the week before. And then I think, and I'm just looking at it going, wow, that's pretty, that's big, that's huge. That's more than big. That's bigger than towns. And then I think about Clinton's, gatherings and Biden's campaign gatherings where they wouldn't even show the audience because there wasn't anyone there. And then what? You've got this huge question of the. So my point is, it looks like it's imploding to include even recently in the last few days. And again, it's not about the outcome. It's just the signs. This whole thing, for instance, with the Hunter Biden deal. Now you have media sources in the mainstream media that have been supporting the effery, have been supporting the narrative that are now starting to write things going against, in this example, Hunter Biden. And you can see that it's just like, it's contradictory, really. And it's contradictory, and it's also becoming the truth, like we've always known, the truth is coming out. So, and it just looks inevitable. So if on top of this, we have this type of situation occurring from our star family, then I have to believe that this is a very imminent thing. And I'm not trying to predict anything. It just feels that way in my bones and from the people that I'm running into, especially since the 22nd of February.
Yeah. There's one other thing. If I can find it now. There was another. I'm trying to remember where I put the book. Actually, it's a book by Dr. Michael Sala.
Okay.
I interviewed Peter Moon. I don't know if you know Peter Moon. I'm trying to see if I can find where I've stuck the book. Hold on a minute.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I must have moved it. It's technology found in the Bugatti Mountains. Do you know about this? The book's Transylvania Moon, I think. Transylvania Sunrise.
So it's in Eastern Europe?
Yeah, and it's the Bugatti Mountains. What people don't know, and it's another interview that I was interested in because I bought the book Transylvania Moon because I was interested. They found somewhere, it's like they're calling it the Hall of Records.
Really?
And it's in those mountains, and in it, they first struggled to get into it because it required a certain consciousness to allow them in. The tables were something like, or the chairs were something like 7 meters tall, and you would go in, and the technology, you would just put your hand there, and it would read your DNA and your history and all sorts of things. So it's technology way beyond anything we know. And when it was found, the US obviously got involved. The president of, I think it's Bulgaria, the Bugatti Mountains, I think it's Bulgaria. Sorry, without the book and a reminder, but people can look up Transylvania Moon. There's several books now about what they found there, but it's technology from an ancient race that were huge because of the size of everything, with huge 7-meter tables and all this kind of stuff. And it gives the history of Earth. It gives who we're connected to. So that, they're calling it the Hall of Records. What's interesting is, as it got activated, there was somewhere was it Iraq or Iran that got activated ancient technology there, and also technology, I think, in the Himalayas. So whatever was activated in this Hall of Records anyway, Bugatti Mountains, I think it's in Bulgaria. When that got activated, then technology got activated. The US and others invaded, and Saddam got taken out.
Right.
The suggestion has been for a long time that it wasn't.
Right.
It was done because there was ancient technology found that he could have used against humanity, and the US wanted it. Now, I'm telling you this now, it's probably safe to tell you now, because when I first heard this is many years ago when the war was started, and they'd trashed the museums in Baghdad and whatever. I was told by an intuitive, someone I trust completely. I actually said, she said to me, Mary, it isn't what you think. There's technology there they want that Saddam Hussein knows about, ancient technology that will give him a lot of power. So they've gone in to get that technology. Now, at the time, I knew a whistleblower who happened to be in Australia at the time. He's no longer in Australia, but he was in intelligence, etc., etc. And so I quite casually, because I'm still very, oh yeah, right, I'm no interest in me. And I put out to him, I said, this is what a friend of mine who's a clairvoyant tapped into, that this is an ancient technology they're after, that Saddam Hussein could have had access to. And he said, Mary, stop right there. Don't say any more over the airways. Don't even write it in an email. Don't even go there, he said to me. It was like, whoa.
Wow.
And it was like, and it freaked me out because I thought, I'm so casual about this stuff. And it was like, yeah, that was all he needed to say to me. That was all he needed to say.
I wonder why with things like that, we'll go back to the subject because this is incredibly interesting. And I got a couple of things I think might tie into it, but I wonder why the reluctance to, like in that case, to say, and there's many other cases, right, where you hear people say, I can't tell you anymore. I wonder why that is. Is that because of a threat from, and I say threat, I don't mean like specific threat, but just a general threat of what could occur as a result of somebody divulging that kind of thing?
Well, that's the inference, this is nearly 15, whenever the war was going on.
That's right. I forgot. Yes.
So that's a long time ago. This is a long time. And for me, I wasn't even interested in the war particularly or anything like that. I was believing the standard propaganda that's out there. Your weapons of mass destruction, Saddam Hussein and all the rest of it. Oh, yeah. I heard that the museum, Baghdad Museum, had been ransacked. And I'd heard all of that, and I just thought, well, that's standard with war, isn't it? They take stuff and whatever. But I'd heard that US soldiers had done a bit of that as well. But I didn't know about the possibility that there was artifacts there of ancient technology that Saddam Hussein could have used to his benefit. And this came out of a clairvoyant lady I know. I highly regard her. She's been a good friend, and she was always pretty accurate. And she said, oh, Mary, this is what's really going on.
Wow.
And I thought, maybe, I'll just check it out, because I happen to know this gentleman, happened to be in Australia at the time. And I said, what do you reckon? Is there any, do you know anything about this? And that was when he told me not to go there, to completely don't even talk about it.
Wow. I'm a big fan of Robert Sepper, the anthropologist, and he calls himself the world's most dangerous anthropologist. He's a phenomenal person. But I think, in the last 15 or 20 videos and he's had videos about this before, but about the giant civilizations all over the world. It's everywhere. It's just everywhere. And of course, technology and oral histories and things passed down in regard to that he's putting out there. When you consider the narratives or the stories in regard to spaceships and to situations like you're talking about in Transylvania, or in this book that's called Transylvania, it would seem to me that and what you talked about in the earlier story, where they were mixing the DNA, like if they want to make a chair or whatever the case is, that these things, including those things you were talking about, would have some type of sentient quality. And I guess where I'm going with this is, if the powerless powers that be, the U.S. or whoever it is, has their hands on this type of stuff, And if you have to have a certain consciousness just to go in,
Yeah.
I would think that, because my thought would be, well, why aren't they using it? And maybe they are, but why isn't it being seen? We're all being fed all this stuff that it's, a war about, taking over territory, whatever the case is. But I just wonder if this technology, to say it one another way, has a mind of its own, or has a certain consciousness that, people that don't have the best intentions can't activate or can't collaborate with. What do you think?
Well, I would say that that's very likely. And the reason I'm saying that is occasionally I get individuals that believe they're part of the SSP, the Secret Space Program. And many of them have been in families in the military. And I've had several cases in recent times where they've been taken and there's been DNA manipulation, things. And one lady said something organic had been put into her head in one of these operations and what have you. So they're definitely implanting certain stuff into individuals that are going to be part of what they want as the super soldier,
Right.
or other mixes, and this is certainly not for our highest good, and this is
Yeah.
part of what they're doing in these bases. And it's not just the isolated one here and there. There's no doubt that a lot of people have, they've revisited memories as a child where they, I say, often their families have been in the military, and often their parents are fairly high up in the
Yes.
military as well, which is part of it. There's genetic lines that go back to certain sources of, we're looking at certain bloodlines
Yes.
that they're looking at as well. So that gets tied. And it's all, I mean, I know a lot of people struggle with this side of things because it's hard to believe humanity's behavior towards humanity. But of course, I don't know if it's all humanity anyway, or whether or not that's other influences, which I suspect it is anyway.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that there is no doubt there's probably thousands, if not millions, of individuals that have been affected by certain programs. Some of those have told me that they were not manageable enough, so were not used anymore, but they still have the memories of it, even though they're not being accessed because of maybe not being quite so malleable. Let's put it like that. A lot of it is testing to see whether the person ultimately will be controlled and have a handler or not. And that seems to be part of it as well. And I mean, I know one particular lady who knows she's a reptilian human hybrid. And she described to me where she'd been implanted and had at least 2 reptilian hybrid daughters with the military. And she said, and what scared her most was when they visited, she said, I really didn't like them. They were not nice. And
Wow.
these were her own genetic daughters.
Well, I can speak, even from my layman level. Okay. I reawoke and, I got onto the internet probably summer 2013. And for probably 3 to 4 years, I interacted with a lot of people, as Soulogy was getting going. And it was a lot of one-on-one interaction. I was doing some session work. And one of the things I noticed right away, and it's never left me, I have like a detector for it. I start hearing from somebody because of what I experienced. Many of the people that I ran into that were talking about certain things, and it's just, between 2 people kind of thing. Their father was in the military. They were near a military base, but there was a history, right? I mean, you could see it, you could feel it. And they obviously had complications from that, and it was pretty intense. So that makes a lot of sense to me. You talked about that you were going to start coming out with, I think this is what you said at the beginning, you start to come out with some things in regard to timelines and such. And I just, think back to 2.5 years ago when we met our friend Franco Di Nicola. I know I've talked to you about him before. Recollections of several planetary incarnations, full memory, and some pretty unique things that occurred in his life while he was here through last October. To include being put into certain bodies and being in certain political atmospheres at a very private level. But I remember when he first came in the door with Soulogy, and we started talking, and he said, and I'd ask the kind of questions I ask, and he would say, "I don't think you're ready for that. I don't talk about that." But we got him to start doing it, and he opened up over the years. But when you said that about, so it reminded me of that, and this moment feels like that. When you mentioned you were going to start talking about timelines and such, and I believe you said the soul, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I understand there is a literal aspect to what your acquaintances and contemporaries are reporting and what you're reporting in sessions and others like you, although there's not too many like you. I can probably count them on one hand. But I mean, this is real. This information is becoming more and more widespread. What are you going to talk about in terms of, or what can you say in terms of timelines and in respect to the soul, and how does that connect to all of this in your mind?
To me, the first thing is everyone that seems to have had an experience tells me time is not linear.
Right.
And that's the bottom line for a lot of people, is that still stay with that old paradigm that you have this string that's time, and we start at one end and we end up old age in the next. What I've understood, and I understood this some years ago when Whitley Strieber, in his book Secret School, he talked about being shown time and how all his experiences in different lives were all together in the same timeline in a vertical way rather than a horizontal way. So it was all now, as in that sense, as much as we struggle to come to those kinds of terms. Many of my regressions have, in many cases, not only gone into the fact that they've had other lives as creator beings, as an energy beings, as dolphin beings. Now Sasquatch is another one I'm coming across where their past lives have been Sasquatch or whatever. So many different forms, many different intelligences, some dimensional where they've just been energy and intelligence, where they needed, one lady I know has told me she comes from the 13th dimension. She was a walk-in, and that all she was or as 13th dimensional intelligence. It really is. They don't need to eat. They don't need to speak or anything. It's just a frequency that they are. But she's come into human form to help the planet at the moment understand more of what they need to know. So she's incarnated in a way that has made her far more limited, but also as a teacher. And many are coming in like that as walk-ins or, walk-in souls. But one of the interesting things that's come up a few times, and one of them is a story I told about a gentleman who talks about being a Sasquatch in other lifetimes, and he now communicates with them in this lifetime and their family, talked about aspects of him as his soul self. One being, I think, I can't remember whether it was Pleiadian, and another one being a mantis, I think. And he's aware of that. So he's aware that he's operating as an other consciousness or intelligence, all at the same time.
Right.
And this is the thing that's does a lot of people's heads in. When you hear of a 7-year-old explaining he's from the future, for example, and he's a grey with 4 digits and has come to this timeline to be human and explain his understanding of why he's come, and also talked about the intelligences that he works with. One of them, he'd said the scientists have an IQ of over 400, explained that he's been shown, different timelines, this kind of thing. So we've got to understand that in this phenomena, it seems to be highlighting that in terms of the soul journey, everything is what we call now. It's just that we are not always tapped into our other parts of ourselves, if you like. Yeah. And I was shown as a way of understanding it from my source was that that's the oversoul, and aspects of our soul are in many, many different realities and frequencies and whatever, only a lot more than my fingers, but so we split off. And so we have an oversoul, connected to that, but there are aspects of us splitting off and experiencing different things in different realities, different dimensions, different frequencies, depending on what the soul wishes to explore. So if you can sort of get to that, one of the ones I'm going to be talking about in my next one in Portal to Ascension is a story that I felt was for some a little bit too far out for them to deal with. Although Dolores Cannon she came out with some pretty bizarre information. So I thought, people are ready for it.
Yes.
And her, if you remember any of her books in Convoluted Universe and whatever, where there were a number of people connecting to Nostradamus on his timeline, and he would give them information about his prophecies and whatever, and the person would tap into that consciousness of Nostradamus. Well, I'm going to talk about a lady who's tapped into the consciousness of Nefertiti, and the aspect of that. And it's like she says she appears to Nefertiti as a ghost spirit when she visits her, but Nefertiti visits her in the same way. So they actually have this communication over, and it's a fascinating, because the whole family have had experiences. The children are drawing the beings. She's had amazing understanding of oversoul. So it's really very complex, but I'm going to be talking about this in the next Portal to Ascension, because her understanding of it is quite fascinating. The children are so in tune with their contacts and what have you. So it's a whole family thing. And it's how they're all experiencing through that contact that I want to show, the bloodline, the intergenerational link. So it's tying again into what frequencies of the DNA are you having within your physical incarnation, then determines your awareness, your understanding, your experience is all tied into that, and the holographic DNA of the soul.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And that was, we're just on a telepathic wave here. Yeah, because I saw something else that you were involved in that had to do with DNA. I think it had to do with, I don't know if this is the right word, but programming DNA.
Yeah.
And that it was, I think it was recent. It was a YouTube.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to watch all of it. Was that? Is that tied in? Does that tie into what's happening now? Or let's say are there people on the earth? Is there a significant, in your opinion, is there a significant number of people on the earth that are altering their DNA either consciously or unconsciously, that are upgrading?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that is happening through the frequencies that are coming to the planet, coming in with the children, coming in with the crop circles, coming in with the ancient sacred sites. All of these have frequencies. And I remember this 9-year-old explaining to me the reason he went to these sacred sites was wherever he went, he got downloads. So it was activating more information. And he explained to me that he talked about the pyramids actually would be activated again and could be used if they were surrounded by pure water, because they were meant to be surrounded by water. And if you then enter that frequency with them with the right consciousness, you go through portals to other places.
Wow. I mean, I don't know how much longer the lid can be kept on this. It just seems like it's a pot bubbling over. I just don't, there's so much information coming out. And I don't know. To me, it just feels like, going back to some of those human more factors, like the why would they remove the counter on dislikes on YouTube? I mean, whatever it may be is leading up to, hey, there's a small group or there's a small part of the population called the one, whatever you want to call it, that's hiding, that's creating this presentation that what is very small is being presented as very large, and what is very large is being presented as nothing or very small. It just feels like this thing is just can't be contained. It's moving very fast.
One of the things that came to me when I was sort of saying, sometimes you feel this overwhelm that, and I think many people are feeling it, what can we do, because, the ones at the top have got such power and money and influence and all those kinds of things. And I came across a wonderful interview with another whistleblower, and he was talking about Project Looking Glass, and
Right.
you know what
Yes.
that,
Yes.
where this ancient technology or ET technology that predicts the future. You put in an intent of what you choose to do as an action, and it will tell you the consequences of that action. And so they have potentially tried all different ways of putting in what the action for their objective of obviously of controlling the planet. And he said over the interview, he said no matter what they put in, the outcome ultimately was always the same. And what he was saying was, which is the awakening of humanity. Right. And he said it's like you've got two people playing a chess game. He said, and they're both there, they seeing all the moves, and the one who knows ultimately he's going to lose is just prolonging it for as long as he can before it's checkmate. Yeah. And that's what they're doing at the moment. And that felt absolutely spot on for what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I shared that on my page a couple, 2-3 months ago. That's one of the most fascinating videos things I've listened to. It really did resonate, and I think he went on to explain that they actually stopped using it because it was fruitless. I mean, there was nothing they could do, which. Going back to what's occurring, and this is another thing that's really kind of anchored today in doing these shows and just feeling everything, and Will Smith slapping Chris Rock and Biden mumbling and bumbling and all the different things that the focus, it's not even, it's almost like a natural thing. People are just in their space, and that stuff is just not, even more so than the last time we talked, the time before that, it's just not holding water. I mean, and it's, in the number of people is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, that, from an energetic standpoint, even the people that join us here today, I mean, the energy of these people that are open, number one, open to these subjects, open to the infinite possibilities, so to speak, and then also being conscious of maintaining their balance and being conscious of deliberately attempting to create a higher frequency and being open to the universe. I mean, that would have to have a physical impact on this earth. And we've said this, and not just me, you, a lot of people over the years, but all these cliches, all these things that we heard are actually really taking hold now in 2022, especially since the 22nd of February. I don't see how the charade can go on. It looks like it's just about to burst. But I do agree with you about one thing, and I've not been able to articulate this very well, and that is there's something about the frame of mind. You wake up, oh, what time is it? I got to do this, and that going away, like that part going away. I've noticed, like in the last week, for instance, I'm sleeping 3 to 4 hours, sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Naps are even going away, and it just feels like that whole time construct is deconstructing. And I know I'm not the only one, because when I do these shows, I see the comments and I get messages. So I think and you're out and about a lot more, and I'm glad to see that, because like I said, people need to hear what you have to say. But I would imagine that you're picking up the same vibe from the audiences, and even from what you do and the people that you interact with, that it's exploding.
And the thing that gives me so much heart is that, whereas I might get, maybe half a dozen emails a week, I'm getting them a day, sometimes more. That's how it's accelerating. And what's fabulous is it's right across the board. It's not just your everyday souls either. It's, a whole range of professions that are coming to me. I mean, I had a lovely word from a veterinarian a lady veterinarian that I was working with not so long ago, probably less than 2 years ago. She says, Mary, now, she said, animals are communicating with me, and and I want to pass on the information to their families, the pet families and whatever. But I'm not on social media. I don't know who to say, look, this is what I do now. And it was, this is a veterinarian, veterinary surgeon who
Holy
is now
crap.
talking to the 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 pets that have passed on and wants to share them with the families.
Wow. That's like going to get Reiki and they start channeling while you're getting Reiki. Let me ask you this. I know that there's a lot of different practitioners. I mean, all in all, it's all energy. I get that, but there's a lot of different specialties. Regression has gotten a lot of exposure. Dolores Cannon, the work you're doing, and so on. But in specific to galactic lineage, parallel lives, the things that you're talking about, the multidimensionality, from the oversoul. In your opinion, is it a good idea, or what are the benefits, or what can you say to someone that might be considering going to someone who specializes in that type of thing? Maybe somebody that hasn't had any out of body, or some of like the story that you told earlier, where they're actually physically there and they go on a ship. And what would you say to somebody? What could it do for somebody? Does it help everybody? What are your thoughts on somebody getting something specific to their lineage, their multidimensionality, in the way that you do it? How does that help somebody?
Well, that's a good question. And some people, for example, if it's an ET experience where they've had missing time and they've wondered about it half their life, perhaps, and wanted to
Mm,
know why they lost 4 hours or something or other. Some of them might be a bit ambivalent, a bit unsure whether or not it's something they really want to find out, because a lot of them have read books on all the dark stuff and whatever. What I have discovered is and because of the way that I work, it's not just exploring the scenario. What you're doing is, when they're on board craft and they're seeing these beings, what they discover, and one of the things that I encourage is, I ask them the question is there any being here that's familiar? And there always is. There's always one they recognize. And so I get then the dialogue going. So you ask that being, how many times have you been on board craft? And they'll reel it off, 2, 5, 7, whatever. This is completely unknown to the individual on a conscious level. So they're seeing a lifelong interaction. Okay, so now ask the being why they brought you this time. And it will be, oh, it's a healing procedure. Do you understand that? I will ask them. Yes or no? Oh, yes. Do you want more information? Yes, I want to know about this. So what you're doing is you're giving them an opportunity to get all their answers
mm,
about all the questions that they've ever had directly from this intelligence in that space, because you can do it. It's like there's no time. Again, it doesn't. People say, well, how can you do that? Because that's the past. So because there's no time. It's all now. And when you realize that, they can have a communication. You can even ask, have they on any level consented if they feel victimized or
right.
whatever? And many of them will then respond. Most of them have responded, yes, but before I came here. And so they're talking about the soul agreement to that
Okay.
experience. Okay, so any question that they've had, conscious questions that I ask them before we start, and then I go into, right, now you understand this, is there any more you want to know about it? So that when they come out of it, they have got a package of information that helps them connect the dots to their life and their experience and their connection to these beings. So it opens up a whole new world for them of reality, but one that makes so much more sense than going around with one eye closed, which is what's happening with a
Yeah.
lot of people, because they don't access that information. It also then triggers more information. So when I record it, the frequency is there. So when
Right.
they listen to it, it activates more data, and I will put in post hypnosis. As you need more information now, it will be made available to you as you can integrate it and harmonize with
Wow.
it. So they've got that going on. So afterwards, you get more of this happening for them as they get ready for it and they start to tap in. So that's one thing. But if we're talking about past lives, the one interesting thing with past lives is many people have had phobias they don't explain, they don't understand. It might be of water, it might be of heights. One little boy realized that his phobia of heights was when he's been taken up to the craft or whatever, and that created that phobia. But some of them have gone back to lifetimes where they have a phobia of something or other, and what you can do then is you can turn that imprint, or you can release that imprint. So
Right.
if it's an energetic imprint, so in other words, if it's a phobia of water because they drowned, they're on a ship or something, whatever it is, right, you can actually get them to shift that imprint because you can ask where it's held energetically.
Right.
And because you're in an altered state, you can say your eyes are an X-ray, you can see down your body,
Yeah.
where is that imprint? And you can give it a color, you can give it a feel, you can
Right.
give it a voice, you can get them to dialogue with it, you can get them also to use their inner healer to release it.
Yeah.
And they come out of it and that phobia is gone.
Yeah, that's very similar to like the work that Morgan does, and a lot of people like her, and
Yeah.
I've interacted with her many times, but I just meant like in specific to these type of encounters that you were talking about at the beginning of the show, and that you're pretty well versed in. I know you go beyond that,
Yeah.
but it just seems like the the narrative of the galactic aspect is there's, and I said this to you before, it seems like there's a more of a physicality, and it seems like it's really coming to the forefront now.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a reason for that, and there's got to be a reason that we're playing, that we're, I see it like this, the way you described it. If I'm walking down a path in nature, like say in a park or something, like a stone path, and I'm just looking on the path, what you're doing and what some of the experiences we have do is they allow us to start seeing the trees, and we're just
Yeah.
seeing more, and we're open to it, and we're looking, and I just feel, and I'm sure a lot of people do here, that as the days have gone on, especially this year, I mean, last year was amazing, but this year's been absolutely amazing. It's really lifted the feeling that there's no linear time, like the time frame from the 22nd of February to today seems like light years,
Yeah.
and the speed of expansion and the experience is increasing exponentially. So if that's happening here, it's got to be happening everywhere, to include those people that are involved in these scenarios, such as soldiers going in and grabbing technology, or even in the government, or even the people around Biden, or even the people around Putin, or whatever the case is. This is not a secret. We're not like privy to some type of exclusive information and code here. I mean, this is much more rampant, I would imagine, than we might have thought, a year or two ago, or if we even would have thought about it.
Absolutely. They know how this is all happening. And so, what are we doing with children that have these so called, they're calling them dysfunctions when they're in fact being activated multidimensionally? They dope them up with Ritalin,
Yeah.
and they make sure the food is poisoned, and they make sure the air is poisoned, and they make sure the water is poisoned, and all of that to shut people down, not just these children and the other generations. And this is what we're getting, is anything that can limit and shut down higher consciousness they are using in one way or another, and frequencies, of course. We know that the MK Ultra frequencies
Sure.
are being used for those as well. So we've got all of that, but there is a part of the new activated person that can see and sense and change that. And I'll go back to a story that I talk about in The New Human, of a young 9-year-old explaining to me where he'd been taken to an underground base. And he explained he'd been put in a chair and there was a lady in a black uniform directly in front of him. He explained there was technology to one side. And he said the lady was trying to bring down my frequencies a number of notches so that she could program information into my head.
Right.
I knew what she was doing, and I kept my frequency too high for her to do it. So she was unable to do that and program me. So he was conscious enough to know exactly how they were working and negate it. And this is what we have when you've got another child, that a 9-year-old explained to me how he deals with lower entities that come around people and whatever. And he said, and that the reason I was dealing with that was they would show me how to deal with those frequencies, those negative energies. He says, now, he says, I go out of body. And when they're attacking other children, I go and I deal with it.
Right.
So here's a 9-year-old doing clearings out of body, which he's conscious of, with other children.
Right.
So you've got this whole level that is why probably they're freaking out, because we're no longer being kept in frequency of limits, because people are fighting. Do you know, one of the things that comes through so many times with experiences is they're afraid, they say, to really open up because of what they can do scares them because it's so amazing, so powerful.
You mean what they themselves can do, not what somebody can do to them. Yeah.
If they open up fully, they said to me, I'm scared of what I could do, Mary.
Right.
I'm terrified that I may just lose it, because it is so unlimited in certain ways that it scares me.
Yeah, makes sense. And there, and I know that these subjects, and again, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be, can create fear in people, even in these communities. Like, is it going to be all right? When's it going to be all right? Are the good guys here? The bad guys gone? But one thing that I've picked up on over the years, and I'm a layman, has been that these higher intelligences in form, they understand that there is a universal law. Like, that's why, in other words, presentation, I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just looking for your thoughts on this, but that's why, we have to consent. In other words, we can be tricked and we can be induced or whatever the case is, but like that kid going to that base, he essentially was saying no, and there wasn't anything they could do. And what I'm saying isn't just for your thoughts, that a being such as that, the lady in the black outfit, most likely has enough wherewithal at that level of intelligence not to F with the universe and bring harm to this child or whatever the case is. Is that the way it works?
It's hard to know just what I was told by those that have had family involved in these particular programs is their parents often sometimes are not fully cognizant themselves. They're controlled.
Right.
So, because you wonder why a parent would take a child to one of these bases to have certain experimental things done to them. What parent does that? But often it's because they also have come under an influence of mind control or being controlled themselves. So that's what we have to understand too. Not all of them are fully cognizant of what they're doing, or feel they've got a handler that stops them from rocking the boat, if you like. So I think some of it is that. But I remember when I wrote the foreword for Niara Isley's book, where Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light, where she was basically abused by my lab,
right.
And wrote she remembered her experiences only through body work, actually, not hypnosis, where she remembers being traumatized, raped, drugged, and interrogated. And I remember when I was, working with her, one of the things that was interesting was that she realized that her soul family, the agreement with the soul family was that she would incarnate and experience this,
right,
to then expose it. And so she was able to expose it. And then when she was able to have enough information, these star beings actually stopped this from happening to her after that time. So in other words, she got the information and she was now going to expose it, and that was it. They couldn't access her after that time. So there is a soul mandate there that is There are many coming in to expose much of this darkness, if you like, and how humanity is being treated as a soul mission.
Right.
And of course, all the starseeds talk about, they've got a mission, they've got a purpose. Some are working with pollution, some are working with energy lines, like the 10-year-old that said he's a center seed dealing with pollution on the planet. You've got many of them coming in with skills, but are aware of their star origins because they have incarnated from those origins, like the 8-year-old that said he's really a mantis.
Right.
He's connected to the mantis beings, and when he dies, he's going back to being a mantis. And described that on board craft, sometimes he evaporates, his essence evaporates into a mantis form for certain things, just like another lady who was a Zeta on board craft as a scientist. And I said, well, where's your human body? And she said, oh, it's just over there. And I said, so you're in that form to do tasks on board craft? She said, yes. And now when I've done my job, I says, well, how do you get back to your human form? And she described this ball of light, her Merkaba, re-inhabiting her human container, as she called it. And wow. So we can go on board craft, and we can actually go into other forms if that's part of the mandate that we have, and our interaction is with these different intelligences as light, as energy, as intelligence, as soul.
Yeah. That Merkaba has been coming up in the last few days. We talked about it earlier today, and there were some good comments, and there were some good comments from the guest. I can't remember who the hell I even talked to today, now that I think about it. But yeah, like it just feels like we're on the cusp of breaking through and accessing this stuff. And it feels, and I know we've had experiences, Morgan and I, a lot of people have had experiences, but it sure seems like it's imminent. And I hate to say that because we've heard that a lot over the years, and there's a lot of narratives and there's a lot of stuff going in and out and about, but it sure feels like something is very imminent. Our friend Franco, and I think I told you this before, had said, and I want to say this would be like 10 days before the U.S. election, and even a few months ago, that by the end, but the way that we were headed, and that with the progress that we were making, that by the end of 2023, we would be ruled by councils of people like you. And I know that's not too far away. And I know that we're, in one sense or another, playing pin the tail on the donkey. But do you think that's reachable? And I think I've asked you this before, but things have changed. I mean, this information's coming out so fast. People are going through massive transformation, going into huge amounts of awareness very quickly, like you were saying. There's community to it. I don't know what the numbers are, but do you feel like we could move that quickly, that we could see something like that?
The only way would be, I suspect, is what we're hearing now about the space arks. Because I think what people need to do, and it is seeing is believing.
Right.
And my feeling is that something like that would be so profound.
Right.
On so many levels. It challenges every belief system. And that has to happen. Right. Look at what you've gone through. Look what I've gone through, and those that have experiences and whatever. All that we ever knew when we first grew up has been, if you like, thrown in the bin.
Right.
Because our reality is it's not like that anymore. It is millions of miles away from that. But we've had years to process this shift in our understanding of reality and what have you. People are going to have a pretty short, sharp wake-up call.
True.
But what is interesting is many of the older generations that are star seeds and whatever, I say they are going to be looking for those to help them cross that bridge. And we've been through it. We understand how it operates. We understand how we can be the linchpin, the bridge between the old and the new.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've heard a lot of people say that over the years. There's going to come a time when we're going to be put to work. And if I just look at the last 3 months, 4 months, I've got 6 kids and 4 have reached out to me. Now it's not a instantaneous thing, but they've all had the air of, "Hey, Dad, what's really going on?" You know, like it's not. This doesn't look right. What's really going on? So that kind of lends to that we're headed down that way. Wow, you're just like a total download. I feel like I just sat down with Kuan Yin or something. My third eye's exploding. So when are you going to be on with Neil again over at Portal to Ascension?
I think the 17th of April, or I think it's somewhere around there, where I'm going to bring in this family of different timelines. And what's interesting, Portal to Ascension is, I think, the 17th, or I'll be the 18th of April in Australia, but it's the 17th.
Okay.
Portal to Ascension.
That's a virtual event. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well. Wow. Okay. I wish I had something to drink around here. just one shot just to kind of stabilize. But thank you so much. I mean, this is fascinating. And wow, if I just look at our relationship or our connections or collaborations, from the first one to this one, I mean, it's such a great indicator of how quick things are happening. And it just keeps, it's really warp speed now. It's quantum speed.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Who knows? The next time we talk down the road, I mean, you know, I might have blue skin and yours might be green, and you know, who knows? But I'm excited. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one last question. I think this thing about the ark may be the answer, but I guess, you know, in the event that for those that get fearful, and I see less and less of that. I see less people making comments, give me some kind of security to know that everything's going to be all right. This is all interesting and everything. But we'll use this as an example. So you guys had the COVID restrictions really big over there. People started protesting, and then they backed off. And then you have these rains. And these rains were not, I mean, if you see a graph of the history of the weather there, it goes like that, which is unprecedented. And then, of course, the slow reaction from the government. I mean, and I guess what I'm saying is that if there was a level of oppression that became, let's say, inhumane, do you think it's more likely that the people would push back, similar to what began to happen over there, but again, it was kind of thwarted? Or do you think it would take something and be more likely that it would be something like the Ark kind of scenario? Because I just don't see where people on the ground would have enough traction. If I look at Canberra, if I look at Ottawa, these things got pushed away pretty quick. And when you get right down to it.
That's the issue, isn't it? Because we're dealing now with right from the top, with a corruption right from the top in terms of how manipulated laws and how they've manipulated the way they can virtually do whatever they want. So something major has to happen.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's enough. The one thing, don't underestimate Aussies, even though she'll be right, mate, is very much, they're pretty tolerant. But there comes a point where they will stand up and be like the Anzacs.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. I saw the way they mobilized and went to what's the name of that place, Lismore. Like people mobilized without any type of like general overseer. They just mobilized, and I mean that was powerful. That was extremely powerful. No, I have no doubt that, and I've said this for a long time. Because Morgan landed there right when they really started to come down on everybody. That seems to be the epicenter or ground zero for the transformation. So I'm looking to that every day, and you know it was quite impressive to me. The spirit of the people and the collaboration of the people and the community of the people was amazing. It really was, and especially when you consider that they don't get any press. You know, I mean,
That's right.
it's just coming from the digital warriors. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I love you. I appreciate you. I always enjoy talking to you, and thank you so much for everything that you do.
It's been an absolute pleasure as always. And keep doing the wonderful work that you and Morgan are doing as well, because you reach so many people. And that's so important right now, that people have that information. So thank you for all your wonderful work.
You're very welcome. I'll see you around. Take care.
Okay.